You're watching Lost or Found with Dr. Michelle Choi, the show where we think about how we can live healthier, happier, and more fulfilled lives. It's so nice to see you again, Connie. Welcome back.
Thank you, Michelle. It's absolutely a pleasure to be with you.
And I always love hearing you talk and speaking with you, so this is going to be really fun.
I'm really excited.
And Connie, would you mind telling us about yourself again?
Sure. I'm Connie Sobczak. I am the co-founder and executive director of a nonprofit called The Body Positive that I founded with my wonderful colleague Elizabeth Scott in 1996. So we celebrated our 25th anniversary last year. I'm the author of a book called Embody: Learning to Love Your Unique Body and Quiet That Critical Voice, and just had a booklet published that's kind of an artistic, fun, creative project called Bodies of Nature, Nature of Bodies. And it's about aging and using nature to help us feel better in our bodies as we get older.
I love that because aging is like a really powerful and overwhelming topic. And
It
I
sure
think,
is.
and it's really nice that there's like more positive information out there, like such as your book about maybe how to embrace that phase in our lives, which could be really cruel sometimes.
Absolutely. And I think people are starting to talk about aging more. So it's fun to hear that people are having different ideas about it. I think as, yeah, just there's more people getting older and so much pressure on trying to look young all the time. And I think people are kind of tired of that. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like the ideals that surround beauty that exist in our culture specifically, like the subject of women and aging, it can be like really painful. And with these ideals, I mean, quite honestly, they could be cruel, and society kind of feeds the belief that like we're not enough or you're not enough. And it's really like hard.
It's really hard at any age. I mean, think about social media and
Mhm.
the magazines that I grew up with. I mean, everywhere. I mean, even going to the grocery store now and seeing magazines. It's just everywhere. There's, and when we say society, really, who is society? That's what I always think about. Who are the they out there that are telling us this is how we should look? Because what I think happens is so probably mostly from advertising and people who make money, so capitalism, anybody who makes money off of trying to get someone else to change their body and think they're ugly, so therefore spending money to try and quote unquote fix it. That then those ideas become sort of to me it's like they're almost in the air and people just absorb them and then start giving them to each other too. And so where does it start? The chicken or the egg, where does this all start? But then how do we perpetuate it by buying into it is what I think about a lot.
Yeah, because I think you bring up a really great point. Like, who is they? I think we need to be really aware of that because why are we letting they affect us, you know? Like even something like social media, it's kind of like the AI of our times that are it's like running our world based on the religion of profit. But, I think we're as humans evolved to like, care what others think in our tribe. But it's kind of gotten out of control with like social media in the picture, like the hearts, the likes, the thumbs up, the negative, sometimes horrible comments, like the perceived sense of perfection that's being fed to us from them, or persuasive technology in terms of like which is used to like modify our behavior. Like we're being programmed, we're like, and without even knowing it, we're almost like told to think a certain way. And I think it unfortunately results in a really like fake, brittle sense of self and even popularity.
I completely agree with you. It's scary to me. I think, I mean, I don't use social media a lot. I have no judgment for people who do. I just don't really have the time in my life to use it. And I think also just I got overwhelmed with that whole thing around likes and if I post something and what if people don't respond to it and and then this whole idea of having to engage with people around something that I've decided to put out there. For me, I probably, if social media had been around when I was a teenager, I got sexually harassed with photos that were drawn and put in my locker. I talk about it in my TEDx talk and how devastating that was and how fully contributed to my eating disorder when I was a teenager. But I know that I was a very naive, vulnerable young person and didn't have a lot of guidance around or support systems around the messages that I was getting. So I can only imagine if I had been around with social media. I don't know if I'd be alive. I think I would have been tortured. And so thinking about the kids that are getting really harassed because they think they're doing the right thing and want to engage, but they don't have any places to go. That's why the body positive is so important and why I created it. It wasn't, social media didn't even exist when we created it, but creating spaces for people to come into where we can talk about things and think differently and really say, who am I and what do I want from my life and what makes me feel good and what makes me not feel good, and why am I moving towards the things that don't make me feel good? That's a huge part of the work that we do for people of all ages.
Yeah, like the real stuff, you know? And I think with like all the information that we have available, sometimes we forget the real stuff. Like they were saying with social media, what sells, what spreads faster and what sells more. It's actually fake news. And because fake news spreads so fast, it sells so well, we kind of get lost into knowing like what is actually fake and true. Like it's harder to find true information. And I think we have to be really, really aware of that, or even like how long our children are on like social media, because it really sets unrealistic standards where you really can't have like a Snapchat looking face, like they take a Snapchat pictures and your face looks totally different and I don't know, smooth
Right.
with
Yeah.
little like, hearts all over the place.
Yeah, it's just I think my thing is always just questioning people. How do you want to feel in your head? I mean, that's what I ask myself. I don't just ask other people, but I think about how do I want to feel in my head. And when I'm scrambling after perfection in any part of my life. So if it's how I look because somebody else looks this way, and I'm not immune to those images. I think probably that's why I am not on social media that much. Just all the images and how other people live and this comparison thing. One of the things that I've learned and I teach through the body positive and that I'm so grateful for is always being conscious of when I'm in comparison mode. And so when it's meeting somebody and all my old tapes running through my head, what my legs look like compared to somebody else's. And that's what drove my eating disorder as well, wanting to eradicate my thighs. And so programmed way back in my brain is still this idea of what good legs look like and what mine look like. And so, but I'm very conscious now. And I think if that's the main tool that we need is consciousness. And then from there, listening to our intuition, listening to our bodies when we take in information, how do I feel? And generally, if we're looking at stuff that makes us feel like crap, our bodies get weighted or, there's that sick feeling in our stomach. One middle school girl I worked with when we were talking about critical voices even said, I feel like it's this sticky tar covering my belly. So how can we listen to our bodies? And then it comes down to choice. Why am I doing this? Do I want to do this? And then creating support systems because we can't always make the choices that we want. So I don't think it's just as easy as, oh, like let's make a choice. But where do we get support and how do we create communities around ourselves that, like you said, focus on a lot more of the real stuff? And then being able to use social media for a tool and have fun with it.
And I think you bring up such powerful points. I love how you said, like, how do you want to feel in your head? I think we need to be really, really aware of that because we can control that. I think we need to process like what information is being fed to us and we can stop some of that. Like, you don't have to blindly take it in and download that program. You can stop it and be aware. And I love what you said, like ignoring the stuff that, makes you feel like crap. You know? Like, we have that choice. If that information starts giving you anxiety or it puts you into this, like, war that you can't ever win on, like, how you should look, like, what are we defining ourselves against? Like, one standard of beauty. I think that's the problem.
That's the problem. And So that comes back to that what we started with is who are the they out there who decide what beauty is. I mean, that's where we have freedom to say thanks but no thanks. That's you're deciding that's what beauty is, and you've fed this to so many people around me, so it's really hard for me to choose to say I have beauty in myself as I am. Looking at my ancestors, whether I know them or not, thinking about the people who my body come from, yet the they out there is so powerful. But I want to live. I mean, if you've heard me speak before, my sister died because of her hating her body and thinking something was wrong with her body. She was 36 years old when she died, and I have had several people die that I know because of their war with their bodies. So I don't want to do that in my life. I don't want to live this. I woke up then like this is a precious life. I woke up also when I wanted to die at the age of 21 from my eating disorder. I didn't want to live anymore. And there was that spark inside of me that just was like, what do I want? I want to live. I want to live a rich, vibrant life. And it took me a long time to work out a lot of the crap that was in the way. But when Stephanie died, I just thought, I don't know how long I'm here. And so we had that's where I feel like that's the choice. Like how do I want to feel in this one precious life that I have? And if I'm struggling, how can I get support? And where is that support?
I totally agree because I think in order to like find your answer, there's like a process, right? In order to find out what's right for you, there's a process where you do feel really badly anxious or depressed or feel really horrible. And I think those feelings that we have is meant to like think about, like that young girl you were describing. I think when you realize like that stuff makes you feel icky, it's like knowing when you need to shut the door, like taking another active role in your life because, I'm really touched by how you brought up your sister because I feel like in Western culture, a lot of times we don't think about how finite life is because we never talk about death. And I think with the ideals of beauty, like it would be such a shame, like if we lived if we lived our lives, you know, in that trap for the rest of our lives.
And it makes me so sad. I get so sad. I was talking to some people at one of the schools I work with the staff, and one of them was saying how their mom or their grandma, and I've heard this from kids for 25 years. Yeah, my grandmother was dying and she was still worried about her weight and what she looked like and didn't want to see herself in a mirror or things like that. I think that when we feel badly, I've had lots of and continue to have lots of things happen in my life that are hard, and suffering is part of it, our lives, and Western culture is trying to alleviate suffering all the time. Suffering allows us to learn, and if we turn towards the suffering with kindness, and that's again what my TEDx talk was about, was turning towards our critical voice, which is our fear self, with kindness and saying, hey, what's going on? Then we have this opportunity to say, oh wow, I feel horrible. I feel ugly. I feel this or that. And yes, a lot of it's from looking at these images, or my friends are saying this or doing this, or I don't look like them, or I'm being teased, or I'm, my partner is telling me I should get Botox or whatever it is. I mean, all the external messages. I feel horrible inside. Okay, good. And that's what my mom used to teach me, like, okay, so this is this moment to learn something, right? This is an opportunity. And if we try and push these things away and try and run from them, or do all that running, scurrying to try and fix ourselves and still feel miserable, then we don't learn anything and we don't have an opportunity to grow. So I don't like when things happen that are uncomfortable, but I kind of like take that breath after a while and be like, what did I learn? Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Oh, thank you. Okay, now I have this opportunity. Now the work begins, though. And there's work involved in this is the responsibility part in our lives. Responsibility. How do I respond? And what's my ability to respond to the stimuli around me? And I think of that as a challenge. You mentioned death too, and we don't talk about death. I am fortunate to be living with my 94-year-old mom, and we both just finished reading a book called The Five Invitations by Frank Ostaseski, and it's about death and how can we live more fully when we hold death with us. And so we talk about death all the time. We just talked about it last night, and she's now at the point of her brain is starting to change, and she's like, I just hope that I'm not, sitting drooling in a corner at some point, but maybe that's what's going to happen. And she's like, I know it's hard for you. It's harder for you. And so these beautiful conversations allows me to be more compassionate with her during the daily stuff. And it's painful at the same time.
Do you think your mom has any regrets, like in this phase in her life?
She doesn't. We've had that conversation. We went and
Hmm.
sat by the ocean and we were talking one day. It was many months ago. She said, do you have any regrets? And I said, yeah, I think so. And it's actually a topic I'm going to work on with my one of my women's groups next week. Is this idea of instead of looking at things? I love that you brought it up because instead of looking at things that happen and we're like, oh, I wish that hadn't happened. It did happen. Okay, so yeah, maybe this could have happened differently. But where am I now? And how can I take those things in and transmute them into something that allows me either to grow now and make change now, or to just be able to accept and say it is what it was, and that's it. So I don't, I'm working on my regrets right now, and my mom doesn't have any.
I think that's actually the uncommon to not have any regrets, your mother,
Yeah.
I
Yes.
think that's an indication of a life well lived for her.
Yes. Yes. Her thing right now is working on forgiving everybody.
Mhm.
Her
That's
mother was
amazing.
harsh. Her mother was really harsh, and that's been the hardest one for her. But it's so cute because I'll go downstairs and say hi, and she's like, you know, I'm working on forgiving everybody, and I think I've done it. They would have done better if they could have. They did what they did, but they could, if they had been able to do better, they would have. And so it's so sweet to watch, like to really see someone at the end of their life. She could live another 10 years. She's bloody healthy. And I just,
Mhm.
we don't know. But she's at the end of her life. And so every day I am reminded of my own mortality. And so this has been like the biggest gift. And it's not easy every day to care for someone, and it's really, I grieve also every day watching and her brain change and watching her slow down. And yet it's it's such a gift because when I had to cry about it the other day, um, because it's hard, yet then I was able to just take it all in and see all the gifts that I'm getting. And the main one is I'm alive. And it is not fun to attack my body. Today, I just had to go and
Mhm.
try on new glasses. And so I'm taking these selfies like up close with my face, trying with my mask to move it around. And I mean, I was like, holy shit, I look really old in this picture. And then I just went, I'm an old lady. And it was so great, because I was like, should I see ugliness? I do this all the time. Like,
Mhm.
and I think I want to start, if I am going to use social media, or I want to, like the pictures in the book that I have, I want to show myself as I am and be like, I'm old and that's cool and that's okay. So we'll see what happens with that. But it's always hard. It's kind of a shock. And then it's like, oh yeah, I am an old lady.
Yeah. It's so true, like, when you look at something, like, it's kind of like a choice. You can see ugliness or you can see something deeper, and I think when we see ugliness, it's there's always, like, a vacancy and an emptiness, you know? And I feel like if I were to really take in, like, the society's ideal of beauty, like, I can't imagine that not being one of my regrets when I'm to die. Like, one of my husband's great aunt, one of her regrets when she was, passing was that she didn't wear more short skirts when she was younger. Like, everyone told her she had great legs. But she never trusted that? But that was one of her regrets, like, wouldn't it be such a shame if someone did not see their beauty that's always existed and never lived it, and then there they are dying, like, then why do that to ourselves?
And I think most people live that way. And one of the things that I got from that workshop I did, The Art of Aging, when I asked people to write in the chat, what are the forces, external forces that cause you to be disconnected from yourself and your body? It was profound how many different answers there were of how much pressure there is to look a certain way. And I think that most people spend most of their time wishing that they were different, or just believing that they're ugly or not good enough, or they might have a fleeting moment of feeling okay, but most of the time thinking that they're supposed to change themselves. Yeah, I wish she had worn more short skirts.
Yeah. If that's what you still carried with you, and if that
Yeah,
was one of your it was such an easy change that could have happened then,
yeah.
And I actually really loved your Zoom workshop, The Art of Aging, which I also participated in. And I really loved how you brought up how we can define beauty for ourselves, not let them define it, but we can define it ourselves and that we can rewrite our story of aging. That is such a powerful comment. I mean, that's a powerful statement.
It's magic is what it is. This is the whole thing. And I do, again, I'm so blessed to have my mom. I mean, when I was young, she wasn't there to teach me how to be a girl in a certain way of like makeup. She never wore makeup and stuff. And she was also depressed and unfulfilled during my teenage years. So she kind of checked out. But um, what she gave us was magic. She gave us play and freedom. And that has, I think, stayed with me as the spark, that life force spark of, wow, we are alive. I mean, we spent so much time outdoors, and just this idea now of, I mean, our planet is in pain, and living in California and seeing the trees die and no water and all the stuff, I'm grieving for that too. And yet I'm looking around, so that makes me even more aware of the beauty that's around me. And how long will it last? I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, why not play with magic? Why not change how we see beauty? Why not say, screw you, they, whoever they are, or thanks, but no thanks, if you want to be nice about it. I mean, just, okay, that's your view, but I'm going to choose to live my life. I'm going to
Mhm.
be alive. That's what I want people to feel.
Yeah, and like, what if they are people you would never even be friends with? But we let them like get into our heads and affect how we act?
Yeah.
What I found really inspiring about your workshop is you kind of began it with like asking the audience to ask themselves, what do we not like about our bodies? It was like an ouch level real.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, like being in meditation and feeling peaceful in the body, and then thinking about, where do I struggle? What are these parts that I struggle with? And then connecting those to nature if we could. I mean, that's that's what I'm doing constantly. That's how I'm, and for any age, like, where do you see yourself in nature? You don't like your legs? Go find them in nature and see something that's beautiful.
That was really powerful, like comparing ourselves to nature and like changing our approach. Because, like, instead of like hating everything about ourselves because we look different, like changing how we see it. I think one of the women who was participating was saying that her lines tell a story. And then, and then there was another woman who compared her belly to a full moon. And you know what? It made me realize, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. But also, like, we never judge nature,
We don't judge nature. We
but we
don't.
judge ourselves so horribly.
And it was so fun because the next night after the workshop, that happens to be someone I knew. And so I emailed her the next day and I said, I just came in from looking at the full moon and I'm thinking about your beauty and your light. And as I sat there and looked at the moon, I just kept thinking of all the round, beautiful bodies filled with light. It was so lovely. And then at the end, the woman who said about the trees and that her grandmother had planted, and she was outdoors doing the meditation, and the trees were there to reflect her beauty to her. And then she could also see her beauty through her grandmother's eyes, and just from these trees that live in her yard. And I mean, it's so amazing. Saturday, I was having a hard day. I did something. I made a big blunder, and it ended up costing me $500 with paying for insurance. I was trying to, I have to tell this because this is like the
Oh
stuff.
no.
The insurance was like 20 something dollars higher than last year. And I was like, hey, why is it higher? So I called, and then the woman's like, oh yeah, get me your odometer readings. And so then I got penalized because one of our cars went over whatever amount it was. So it cost $500. And I was like, I was so mad at myself for this moment, because it was like, why didn't I just pay the damn thing? Why didn't I just pay it? What was that? I was tight. I was being tight. And so I ended up, and then I had an encounter with my mom that made me sad. That's when I cried, and I was with my husband. I was like, this is all too hard. And then I went up in the hills, and I was looking at all the trees and the nature and the rocks. And I just found myself there, and I sat and I wrote, and all the things that are breaking and falling apart, and the trees are dying because of climate change. And I just kept saying thank you to them. And I kept saying thank you for your beauty, and seeing them passing on the beauty to the other trees that will grow. And it just saved me. I mean, not just about the way I looked, it was about my whole being. I came home with my essence intact, and had the most beautiful evening with my family because of it. I got my lesson. As soon as I got into nature, it was like, your tightness always blocks you, and it makes things harder. And so it was a $500 lesson that I got, like, stop being so damn tight. It's like, okay, I'm letting go. I'm going to trust that it's okay, and it was so beautiful because I just turned it around, and I could have stayed mad at myself for a long time. And so now whenever it comes up, like, I just go, oh yeah, thank you for the lesson. But nature gave it to me full on, just being out in nature.
I think that perspective is huge though, and knowing that you can change your perspective. Like in the grand scheme of things, it seems so important in your house. And it's a lot of money, but when you go out into something that's so much more bigger than you and you feel it,
Yeah. Yeah.
in the end
And
it's some money.
right. It's like, and my daughter was there too. And I'm always saying to her, oh, it's just money. And so she said that. I was like, yeah, I'm taking that in. I'm taking it in. I'm taking it in. And then it was so cool because at dinner, my husband was talking about how he'd read about these two gigantic black holes that are circling each other. And in
Mhm.
10,000 years, they're going to collide, and they're going to cause a ripple in the space-time continuum, right? So we are just these minuscule specks on this beautiful orb that's rotating and flying through space. And here we are. And that's magic to me. So that's where I just keep coming back to, it's magical to be a human and being alive on this amazing planet. And I'm not trying to say that to take away from the daily struggles and the things that we have, and that when we do get into all that comparison, I do it too. I'm not immune from that. But when I'm conscious, and when I that's my commitment to myself right now, just consciousness. Like, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. I'll start down that fear path. I'll be tight. I'll be mean. I'll see ugliness in myself. But the whole goal is to limit the amount of time I spend doing that by being conscious. And then from there, doing the work, learning the lessons, and then getting back to like, wahoo, I'm here.
Totally. And I think it's really okay to have moments where you put your hands over your ears and be like, la, 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 because there is a lot of stimulation. And you could get information from so many places, like we discussed, social media, sometimes your friends. But I think like it's important to note that you have control over what you do. And sometimes it's really important to shut some of the unnecessary stuff, so that your approach is appropriate for you. Like, yeah, our we it's like we have a tendency to kind of always like the negative, but we don't have to choose that. You could choose something more humane, or you can consistently choose to be hateful. But unfortunately, I think that's a choice. And I think being reminded of the grander scheme of things really helps too.
Yeah. Yeah. Choice. It's a biggie. And choice, when I think it gets hard when, someone is a people pleaser or wants to be liked or wants to fit in. And as you talked about tribes and wanting to not be excluded, it gets harder to choose myself, to choose what I know. And the noise is so great, like you said, that it's hard to know, what do I know? I do an activity, and I actually have it on my website that I shared as a download. It's called What Do I Know? It's really simple. I got this one time sitting in a laundromat. We were living in a little cottage in South Berkeley, a controlled little cottage that had just been sold to a really not very nice landlord, and he took away our washer and dryer. And so I was sitting in this laundromat, kind of pissed at life. I was like, and I was thinking about my work and how can I get myself into a place, always the striving thing, and I just thought, I don't have any answers. So I sat there with my notebook, and at the top I wrote, what do I know? And I just started letting my hand write and see what came. And then I knew when to stop, because I kind of went, oh, that feels better. I feel calm.
Mm-hmm.
I feel okay. I feel trusting. And so that's an activity I do all the time. What do I know? And it connects me with my intuition because people are always like, listen to your intuition. It's like, sometimes we can't hear it. And that's really helpful for me to connect me. It connects me with my body, but I don't use my brain. I just let my hand go without judgment. Anyway, I offer that to people. It helps me a lot.
I love that, because what do we know, right? I think we all have a sense of our uniqueness. Our uniqueness is there. And I think, we become ugly when we think that there's only one way of beauty. But our uniqueness is something we know. And I think that's the true information.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been trained to not believe what we know and to discount what we know. And I think that that's the sad thing. I've heard when my daughter was growing up, I remember hearing parents say, I have this one instance of just really where it stood out. And a child said something, and the parent said, oh, you don't think that. And that stayed with me, like, well, they did think that because they said it, right? And so that's always stayed with me, like in parenting, oh, you don't want that, or you don't need that, or you don't believe that, instead of allowing the child to figure it out and ask them questions about it to help them move through the world. Yet to say, no, you don't know, this is, and it creates that disconnect with what do I know? And so we are, as adults, if that has happened to us, or maybe it came from friends or teachers or whatever, wherever it comes from, it might not come from parents, but how do I reconnect with what do I know? And that takes some time, whether it's through food and what I want to eat, or whether it's through partnerships and who I want to be with, or rest, or movement, or all the things in our lives, careers, whatever it is. What do I know? What do I know? Reminding ourselves, this is my life, and I'm the only one living in my head, right? I'm the only one that has to live in there. How do I want to feel?
Totally. Like recently I took a break from social media for like about 2 months. And it's really, what I realized is like, I don't really need social media personally for myself, And, I first started it for the podcast, but then I easily got engulfed into it, like because it's addictive, right? But you realize after stopping, in retrospect, it's like a whole bunch of crap. You fill your time with so much crap. And when you shut out some of the noise, fine, it's a little bit more boring too, and I read the news. But it's easier
Yeah,
if you just shut out some of the crap.
yeah.
So you kind of understand, yeah, what you do know.
Right, exactly. And whether it's the pressure to, I mean, I've heard so much, oh, it seems like everybody has a perfect life because that's what they show. Um, I mean, I think there are pieces of social media that are really beautiful. So if you're marginalized and live in a town where there's nobody like you, to be able to connect with people, that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. Yay. And yet, as you said, like the addictive kind of just scrolling through. I worked with a coach who called it input addiction. And so I was working with a team of high school girls recently, and the one just could not put her phone down. She could not put her phone down for an hour. Just, it was like I could see the addiction in action, just like had to constantly check it, and wasn't fully engaged. Uh, what do we do with that? How do you use, not abuse? It's like drugs. It's like anything. I think that if we can figure out ways if we want to use it, but make it work for us rather than against us, I think that that's the tricky part.
Yeah, I mean, it is like drugs, that's
Yeah.
why there's only 2, like, areas that call the people, like, users, and that's,
Hmm. Right.
drugs or social media and I
Right.
think when you cut out the distraction and knowing where your distraction comes from, I think we have more of a chance to, like, define beauty for ourselves,
Yes.
and that's a standard that we can reach. You know, instead of this unreachable standard that, you know what, you're just gonna drive yourself crazy for the rest of your life.
Right. And that's where the choice comes, right? Is okay. I mean, if you want that, that's fine with me. I'm not judging. I'm really not. I get it. Like I say this, I had a seventh grade girls class that I was talking to. And I just remember this one time, it was one of my last sort of classroom presentations. I was like, I'm done with this. But I just said, like, you have a choice. Most people hate themselves. Most people think they're ugly. Most people try and fit in by doing the right thing. I said, that's cool. If you want that, that's fine. Now there's also this other world, and this is what I'm working with all these people who are saying, wait a minute, this is my life. I want to choose to like myself. I want to choose to see my beauty. I want to choose to define beauty for myself. That's a choice too. And I said, there's a whole bunch of people out there that are doing that. But again, if you want to choose the other, go for it. That's fine with me. I'm not, it's your life, not mine. But just remember that you have power here.
Yeah, and I think a certain life sometimes may not contribute to your well-being
Yeah,
and even your health, right?
right,
Like,
right. And hating ourselves, or even, I mean, if it's not brutal hatred, but just kind of like that eh, and always picking at ourselves.
your
That's what it
face
sounds like
your
to me.
face was very cute, by the way.
I know, I wish that
It
people
was
could see it.
adorable.
It's just like and that poking, picking, and
Mhm.
I just feel like that just takes away so much life force. And
It
again,
does.
I have moments where I do that. I am part of this culture. I am affected by it. And yet it's the choice every day. And when it does come up, what am I going to do? Am I going to keep doing that? Or am I going to say, oh, stop? Okay. And then go figure out whatever I
Mhm.
need at that moment to bring myself back to, I like myself. I have purpose and value. I have beauty. It's old beauty now. It's my beauty. And then the thing about defining beauty, starting with ourselves, is there's beauty everywhere. Then I see so much beauty. I mean, like looking at you right now, I'm just feeling like, oh, I have chills. It's so much beauty. And looking out my window
I'm glad it's
behind
good
you,
chills, not creepy chills,
oh, it's beautiful chills. It's like I know when something's real because I get chills from head to toe. It's like, oh yeah, that's real. That's the real part of life.
I
But
prefer not
like,
to be creepy, yeah.
yeah, no, we're not being creepy. So that's the fun. I mean, and that's playful and fun. And when I go to the grocery store, really taking in the people that I'm chatting with. I'm very much my father. I chat with people a lot when just when I'm shopping and stuff. And I've made friends with like really young people that have different lives and very different from me. And like when we see each other, we're like, oh hi. And it's just like I soak in their beauty. I really do. I consciously take in people's beauty when I'm connecting with them.
You're choosing how you're living,
Yeah.
knowing what we all experience, like, what
Yes.
you experience more, I think.
Yeah. And then with that, yes, I suffer too. And I also feel like because I choose to feel a lot, I mean, I really feel things. It's also my nature. I mean, I just feel everything deeply and I allow myself to do that. I don't try and shut things out. Yeah, there are painful moments. And yet those are beautiful too. Really is. There's so much beauty in pain and
Mhm.
suffering when we
There's
turn
a
towards
story
it.
to be heard.
Yeah, yeah, and the tears
Mhm.
and just all of it. And if we get into that superficial beauty, the one-dimensional idea of what beauty is, it's so sad. It's so boring. It's so flat, and that's just not how I want to be.
Yeah. Like no one judges a redwood tree for all
Yeah,
their lines. You
yeah,
know?
yeah,
That's seen as beauty.
yes.
What do you think happened to those cultures who used to, honor the aging? Like what happened?
What happened? Please, if you can answer that. Where are they? I
I need
know,
one.
I know, I know. And they just got steamrolled over and just destroyed all the magic and all the wisdom
Yeah.
that humans had.
Sometimes I wonder if like the wrong people are making really big decisions, like social
Sometimes you wonder.
media. Yeah, it was meant to like really like what we were saying, connect people with each other. And then it became like selling people's, like identity and, that kind of stuff. But back then it was meant for something different. And I sometimes wonder like with many things, and I'm fine, I may be really like partial, but I feel like women real women could make things a whole lot better, you know?
Yeah.
Like that correction that no, like kind of like this. And forgive me for saying this. Like in porn, vaginas are always really, really thin, but not all vaginas look like that. And I
Yeah.
feel like a woman would correct that
Right.
instead of like a man's standard of beauty kind of thing,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Patriarchy, I think, is harming us all. Hierarchy, any hierarchy, patriarchy, anything where someone has power over others. Yeah. And I feel like that's one of the reasons I still am with the body positive too, just like working with young people who are women identified or queer identified or something out of that, those who are currently running all the systems. And I just want them to be not have the burden of shame, body shame, so that they can go out and change the world. I may
Yeah.
not see it in my lifetime, but you're right. Like new people have to be making the decisions.
And that's a really relevant point that you make because with patriarchy, only a couple of people could be in power. But what if, like, all of us could be in power, for yourself? Like, and power could be shared and there's a connection. Like, it's not just a select few who are up there in the hierarchy. There is no hierarchy.
Yeah. And then just taking away the right and the wrong way that we're supposed to live our lives, that there's a right way and a wrong way to be, to act, to love, to look. I mean, all the things. I mean, if we could just let people, wow, like really express the uniqueness, like you were talking about before, of who they are. What a beautiful world. The world would be saved. The planet probably would be saved. So many things would be different.
Totally. I mean, the words that come to mind are unfortunately, fuck that. But, like knowing
Yeah.
when to say it,
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that's that, fuck the they out there who
yeah.
say, this is how I'm supposed to live. I think I work for myself. I created my own work because I couldn't be in systems. I couldn't be told what to do. I am a rebel. It was hard for me to have people tell me how to live my life, just even in work environments. And so I think for my own mental health, I was talking to someone about this yesterday who's in a system and trying to navigate it. And I said, I just had to leave the systems and create my
Yeah.
own and create an environment where people have voice. I mean, yeah, I might be in charge, but everybody has a voice and is heard.
I think you really heard your message because I feel like we live in a society where everyone wants to be like sort of like the same. Like there's traditional ideas of success, but I think, what if all of that's bullshit and like maybe all you need to do is really just be unique to you. And there's unique talents or unique light that we're all born with, and there's a way in which we can shine our light if you are unique to you.
And when I think of what the world could be if people really were able to do that, it would be
Mhm.
beautiful. And not everyone's going to want to. Some people really need that. I need to be told what to do. I'm learning that. I get that. But to me, that's like, where's the fear that's been instilled in them to block them from saying, what do I know? What do I
Mhm.
want? How do
Or
I
maybe
feel?
you're wrong,
Yeah, exactly. Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's your opinion, but that's not sitting inside of me very well. I either am acting out in certain ways, and I think that that's where the numbing out, the unconsciousness of what people do, and not looking at their actions and being self-aware in terms of, I'm doing this because I don't I can't maintain that perfect, I'm fitting into the system. So I have to bust out in some way or another.
I agree. You know, I'm 44 today, and I
Oh,
read
today?
today.
Happy birthday,
Thank
Michelle.
you. And I read that, you should be the best version of the age that you are. Because especially with a person in their 40s, now they look like they have a story to tell. It's so true. Like when you look at pictures of your younger self, like granted, I was thinner then, I had less lines, less roundness, but like I do look like I have a story now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
It's a
like I
beautiful
think,
thing.
and maybe like aging gracefully is to show who you really are.
Absolutely. And be who you really are, and
Yeah.
move through the world as who you really are. There's that whole thing of the fear of becoming invisible, especially for
Mhm.
women identified people who get old. And yeah, maybe the world won't see me as much, but I'm certainly not going to be invisible. I will never be invisible because I'm going to take up space. And when I'm there, and if I'm going to ask for respect. And I'm not going to let people make assumptions about me because of my age. The other thing that's fascinating is when people say, "Oh, you don't look your age." I'm 61 now. I'll be 62 this spring. You don't look that old. It's like, yes, I do, because this is what it looks like. I do. I look like this. One time, somebody I had known when I was in my 20s, we worked at a restaurant together, and then he was a UPS guy near my office where I was at the time. And my hair was gray then. I was in my 40s, and it was mostly gray then. And then he said to me one day, I saw you from behind, and then I realized, at first I thought you might be an old person, and don't you want to do something to your hair so you don't look
Oh
so
my
old? I was
gosh.
like, hell no.
Did you
I'm
need
a
a knife at that moment?
exactly. And then where others, I've been stopped, when I was in my 40s and my hair was changing, I was stopped by young men like, what are you doing to your hair? And now I'm stopped by women who are my age, to ask me like, what do oh, I wish my hair could be like yours, but I can't do that. Like, I'm not making a statement about it. It's just who I am. And I'm not, it's not a political statement. I love when people dye their hair too, just be you, do you.
Mhm.
And this is me.
And we can like totally be our limiting factor,
Yes, for
you know?
sure.
Yeah,
100%. And where our limiting factors, when they get inside our head, that's the
totally.
whole thing. Right. That's the thing. It's like that's a really good question to ask yourself. How are they in my head?
Mhm.
And do I want to listen to them?
And I really think this too, like our bodies are like a reflection of who we are sometimes on the inside. And if you feel really at war with your body, then I think sometimes it's a question of, and I know you talk about this in your own work, but if you're really at war with your body, it's sort of like time to ask, it could be a time to ask yourself who you are on the inside
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
putting you at war, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And how did that happen? And just be sad about that if you feel that way. How did that happen? What happened to me? What happened to my little self? I have a picture of myself as a 2-year-old walking on a beach at this lake I've been going to since I was that age. Uh, and I remember it's like one of my earliest memories. And I just found it. My dad happened to have taken a picture. Um, and I'd had a really tough moment. All the big kids got to go out in the boat with the other dad. And so, like, my sisters and the older kids in their family got to go out, and I wasn't allowed to go. And I just was so mad not to be included. But then, like, somehow my dad cheered me up, and I look at this picture, and I'm like this, like little face, and I've got a stick, and I'm just like marching down the beach, and I just love that because that's still part of me too. And then I also have inside of me the 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old who was really tortured and told so many things about myself from my peers, from my friend's father told me I had a fat ass, and like all the messages that I got during that time about how I wasn't okay, and the rejections that I experienced. That person's still in me too, and I'm starting to have I like to have conversations with her because she has fear, and that still comes out in me from time to
Yeah.
time. So I'm really wanting to talk to her now and let her know that we're okay.
Do you talk to her?
I do talk to her. I just yesterday I was sitting out in my yard, and I imagined her coming like my daughter used to when she was a big gangly
Mhm.
teenager and sitting on my lap, and I was like holding my teenage self and just talking about, oh yeah, like these are the things that happen, and because of that, and this is where this idea of no regrets, this is why I was thinking about it. Because those things happened to me as a teenager, I started the body positive. That
Mhm.
I was headed in a completely different direction. I was planning to be an electrical engineer. That would have been okay for my life. And I don't wish upon my young self that I had all the struggles I had. And yet, here I am. And because of that, I started an organization that's reached millions of people. And they have an opportunity now to make different choices or to get the help that they need to support themselves in feeling better. And so I tell my young self that, like, it was rough. It was rough, and you did it. You hung in there and you made it through. And here we are. And I've got you now. I've got you.
Mhm.
I've got you. Self love is ours. So it's okay.
I think that's so beautiful. Do you think your 18-year-old self is still asking for forgiveness, or does she feel forgiven?
Ah, wow. Let's see. Yeah, she feels forgiven. I think what she's really looking for is someone to say, "You're okay. You're okay." And just the way you are, you're okay. And that's kind of the period where my mom was checked out, and I love
Mhm.
my mom, and we've had a really close relationship, and she became a therapist, and at my age she was 60, like around 61 when she became a therapist, and did beautiful work with Vietnam veterans for the rest of her career. Still talks to some of them on the phone. um, but during that time when I was like in those really critical years, she was really depressed. She hated the
Mhm.
job she had. She needed to go back to school, which she did, to have a different career before the therapy career. And so for me, it was really important when my daughter was going through all of that to be that person there, to be like, yeah, this is hard. And you are okay. And yes, it's hard. And yes, you're okay. And yes, that was a struggle. And yes, you're okay. And you're going to
Mhm.
make it through.
The constant reminder sometimes.
Constant. Yeah.
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 Do you feel like you're living the best version of who you are right now?
Wow. Yeah, I do. I do. And my life is really complex right now. And for what I have going on, absolutely. I mean, I'm a caregiver every day, and that's really hard. And I am running an organization with not quite enough help, and that's really hard. And my husband has health issues, and that's really hard. And I'm a support system to a lot of people. And yet, yeah, I am, because I'm conscious. I'm really wide awake right now in my life. And I'm really kind to myself. I mean, not in every moment. I don't want, every time I say it, I always have to say this because I don't want people to think there's ever like this, whoa, I've made it. Because there are moments.
Most of the times,
Most
most
of
of
the
the
time. I don't spend
time.
a lot of time there. I spend more time being really proud of myself and gentle with myself and
Yeah.
appreciative of myself. And I'm also learning how to be softer and kinder with others, which I have a little bit of an edge. And so those who love me, I'm learning how to be more patient and forgiving of myself when I'm not. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think I'm living my best self. People from the outside might look into my life and be like, that's really a boring life you have. You don't do much except work and take care of people. But like I have these incredible moments that are just filled with, I don't think I'm going to have regrets. Like if
Yeah.
I died tomorrow, I wouldn't have any regrets.
You seem filled with purpose to me, and I think that's a life that, like, Many of us don't know that we should be striving for it, but you look like you're living with purpose.
I feel it. I do. And it took a lot to uh, took a lot of suffering to turn towards my purpose and realize I had purpose and turn the suffering that I experienced and the loss that I experienced into something that feeds me.
Connie, I just want to say I adore you and you're one of my heroes. And I love, love,
Oh,
love your organization. Thank
thank
you so
you.
much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. I adore you too. And talking with you, highlight of my day, highlight of this week that's just starting. What a joy. Thank you for
Thank
what you're
you.
doing.
English as a second language came in handy. Thank you. And Connie, how can we find you?
Yes, many ways. I have my own website now, ConnieSobczak.com. My last name is hard to spell. Someone said, you should have not done that for your website. It's like, whatever, it's me. Sobczak, ConnieSobczak.com. And there's a connection there to my TEDx talk, which I think might be really useful if you got anything
It's
out of this
amazing.
conversation. Yeah. And then thebodypositive.org. Thebodypositive.org is where you can find us. And then if you are on Instagram or social media and you want to follow something that's different, I'm not in charge of our social media, but people love it, at The Body Positive. So,
True and enlightening information from your social media.
yes.
Thank you, Connie.
Thank you, Michelle.
See you next time on another edition of Lost or Found. Please subscribe and follow Dr. Michelle Choi on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. For more information, visit our website, drlosterfound.com.